Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. I'm Will Robinson Smith. I'll be providing our commentary for the duration of this coverage. We have a bit of a special circumstance this evening. We're doing some cross country coverage tonight. I'm actually currently here at Starbase in South Texas as we are very much preparing for the morning launch of SpaceX's Starship rocket no earlier than Saturday morning at 7 a.m. Central Standard Time, 1300 UTC. We'll have much more on that later on in this broadcast. Stephen Young, holding down the fort back in Florida, running the technical operations from our Spaceflight Now News Bureau at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. All right, and Bernstein is on the ground with me here at Starbase. He's resting up before the big launch tomorrow morning, making sure all of his gear is good. Going to be doing some tracking from South Padre Island. And Michael Kane has the evening off, but of course, you can always follow their launch photography by checking them out on X, formerly known as Twitter. In the center of your screen on a very foggy night here in Florida, you're looking at the heart of SpaceX's Space Launch Complex 40, otherwise known as Slick 40. Seen some rain off and on. It's been a bit of a foggy, breezy night. We'll come to the weather in just a moment, but in less than 45 minutes, SpaceX is going to attempt to launch the first of 3 missions for the weekend. Exceedingly busy for the launch company. First on deck is the mission you see before you, Starlink 6-28. This will be the 34th dedicated Starlink mission of the V2 mini satellite variety. Currently, SpaceX is targeting a T0 liftoff at 12:05 a.m., just on the other side of midnight on the 18th. For our viewers joining from around the world, that's 05:05 UTC. If you'd like to help support what we do here with Spaceflight Now and our coverage of the space program, there's a quick and easy way to do that. If you hit the like button, click subscribe so you get notified whenever new videos are posted and you don't miss any of our live streams. We've been putting out quite a few videos while we've been down here at Starbase, so hopefully you've been enjoying the content we've been creating on the YouTube channel. Also, be sure to share the stream. It helps more people find our coverage and everything else going on with our channel. And naturally, we can't do these launch broadcasts without the support of our wonderful viewers like you and our fantastic channel members. Speaking of which, one of those, Astro Joe, also one of our moderators, gifting a Spaceflight Now membership. Really appreciate that, Astro Joe, always helping to keep it kosher in the live chat along with Stephanie B and Dremwolf. You guys do a great job and really appreciate Astro Joe gifting a membership to Deb K. Deb K now also along with Janine Delasera, who's been a member for 1 month. Thanks for joining us again this evening, Janine, who says, hello, everyone. Channel membership allows you to have access to 4K live stream views of all the missions that go up from the Cape, as well as access to member-only videos and discounts at our merch shop. That's shop.spaceflightnow.com. And if you'd like to join in the conversation with this mission, talk about this launch, or if you have any other questions you'd like to pose in this stream, you can also use the YouTube Super Chat feature. Not only will you help build the content for this particular launch, but you also are helping support us do special coverage as we are here at Starbase. So we are powered by the YouTube Super Chats as well as our wonderful channel membership. So thanks to everyone who helped support us here at Spaceflight Now. And for all those who are just supporting us by tuning in tonight, welcome aboard. Thanks to Robot Wolverine for joining at the pad leader level. Really appreciate that. Thanks for the support. We're now T-minus 41 minutes, 6 seconds, and counting this launch. Coming up in 3 minutes and counting is the point at which the launch director would give the result of the go, no-go poll for the start of propellant load. Assuming SpaceX is continuing to target that 12:05 liftoff. At that point, they would look at fueling starting 3 minutes later, T minus 35 minutes. So we'll be keeping a weather eye on updates from SpaceX as to the start of fueling. If you haven't been with us recently for live launch coverage, just a point of note, SpaceX is not providing mission audio, though we are quite adept at covering Falcon 9 launches at this point. So we'll be sure to keep you in tune with all the things that we're watching for visually as fueling gets underway. SpaceX is running the countdown from its Hangar X site at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. It's also the facility where they refurbish Falcon boosters and prepare them for future flights. SpaceX also has support for this launch in part from the control room at their headquarters in Hawthorne, California. A T minus 39 minutes, 47 seconds and counting. Again, just about a minute and a half is the point at which the launch director would make the call on the start of propellant load. Once SpaceX does start fueling the Falcon 9, they are committed to that liftoff time. So we are going to keep an eye. If you look at the bottom of the rocket, sort of where the darker black part of it meets the lighter gray portion just above the tree line, that section you'll start to see a frost ring form once the liquid oxygen starts flowing aboard the first stage. That's an indication that fueling is underway. So keep an eye out for that after the T minus 35 minute point in the count. T minus 38 minutes, 18 seconds and counting. Less than 20 seconds away from that call on the start of propellant load. While we are awaiting that moment in time, let's go ahead and step through the countdown timeline for this mission for Starlink 6-28. As I mentioned, the launch director will give that call on starting propellant load at the T minus 38 point. T minus 35 minutes, we have two events that come up. We have both the start of loading RP1 or rocket grade kerosene that starts to flow aboard both the first and second stages of the Falcon 9 rocket. At the same time, also at T minus 35 minutes, liquid oxygen will flow aboard the first stage of the Falcon 9. It's followed up at T minus 16 minutes when the second stage liquid oxygen loading begins. Before we get to that point, though, at about T minus 20 minutes, 20 seconds, that's when the so-called big vent occurs. You'll see that coming from the strong back as the feed lines are chilled. And at T minus 7 minutes, the chill down of the 9 Merlin engines will get underway. It involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and the turbo pumps. Protects those engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About 6 minutes out from liftoff, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. Then at T minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the strong back retract begin from the Falcon 9 rocket. That will start with the clamp arms underneath the payload fairings opening up. Then the strong back or the transporter erector will tilt back about 1.5 degrees on the Falcon 9 and will stay in that position until liftoff. At that point, strong back will pull back in a much more rapid fashion, clearing the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. About 2 minutes before liftoff, liquid oxygen loading should be complete. At that point, the Falcon 9 will be fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, control of the countdown will be handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. The propellant tanks will be brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director will give their go for liftoff at T minus 45 seconds. The engine ignition command will be issued at T minus 3 seconds. And then if all 9 engines are healthy and the flight computer will give the command for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 for T0 liftoff. Again, currently targeting 12:05 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. 05:05 UTC. Taking a look back out here at the pad, you see things are still pretty foggy tonight. It's been a less than ideal weather day out on Florida's Space Coast. Much of the state has been dealing with a bout of foul weather for a good chunk of back end of this week due to some storms coming out of the Gulf Coast. Coming into tonight's launch attempt, the 45th Weather Squadron forecasts just 60% odds of favorable weather for liftoff during this window lasting until 2:59 a.m. Eastern Standard Time tonight. Some of the primary concerns are the cumulus cloud and the liftoff winds rules. If needed, backup opportunity tomorrow, 24 hours after the initial time. So that window would be opening up at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Launch weather looks much, much better if SpaceX does decide to punt to that timeline. Stands at 90% favorable launch conditions, with only cumulus clouds being the watch item in a Saturday night launch scenario. Now T-minus 34 minutes, 21 seconds and counting. At this point, SpaceX should be starting the fueling process if they have decided to commit to a liftoff at 12:05 a.m. Eastern Time. So if that is in fact the case, as all indications currently seem to be, should start seeing a little bit of a frost ring forming again near the base of the Falcon 9 first stage booster in the next couple of minutes here. As we look toward that point in just a few moments, want to thank Cool Water 906 for joining with channel membership at the pad leader level. Really appreciate you supporting us, Cool Water. One of our channel members, been here with us for a month, Janine Delasera, with 2 separate $1 super chat donations. Really appreciate that, Janine. Thank you so much. And the Gucci pilot with a $5 super chat, who asks, are you planning on having live coverage from Starbase? If so, what time are you on air? Thanks, Darren. Yes, in fact, we are having live coverage from Starbase. I am currently in Starbase. I've got eyes on the production site there, which is seemingly busy at all hours. It's quite the operation they have here down at Starbase. And I can also see the orbital launch mount directly across from where we are situated, both for this live coverage as well as going into the next big show, which will start at 5 a.m. Central Time, this launch going up from Southern Texas. So keeping my brain in a central timeline and also trying to think about Eastern time zone for this Starlink launch that we're focusing on right now. But yes, our live launch coverage will begin at 5 a.m. tomorrow morning. And the 20-minute launch window for the Starship mission opens up at 7 o'clock. It's a much longer fueling process for a much bigger rocket. So we will have coverage, again, starting at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning. So hope all of you that are with us tonight can get some rest, and we will see you certainly when that happens. We do have at T-minus 31 minutes, 38 seconds, confirmation from SpaceX that propellant load has indeed begun for this mission. So SpaceX is committing itself to that launch attempt again at 12:05 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. For us here in Texas, that's 11:05 p.m. Friday night, and 05:05 UTC for all the folks joining from around the world. And as you can see at the bottom of the rocket, that frost ring starting to form, as mentioned it would, a good visual indication that backs up what SpaceX is saying. That fueling is in fact underway. Now T minus 29 minutes, 2 seconds and counting. Foggy though it may be, SpaceX is going for a launch attempt tonight. So let's talk about where this rocket's going to go once it does leave the pad. Chat a little trajectory, shall we? Falcon 9, of course, going to be launching from SpaceX's workhorse pad over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, Slick 40. They'll be flying, as all of the launches have, from the Group 6 shell of the Starlink constellation in a southeast trajectory toward the Caribbean. Following stage separation, the first stage will land on one of SpaceX's 3 drone ships. Tonight, the drone ship that's on deck is Just Read the Instructions. The upper stage will continue on with the Starlink satellites after stage separation. The fairing halves will jettison just a bit downrange of the map you see here on your screen as well. SpaceX has a couple of recovery vessels on the East Coast. It will be scooping up those fairing halves, and like with the first stage booster, will bring them back into Port Canaveral, where they will be refurbished and turned around for future flights. If you'd like to see what the fairing recovery process looks like, this is a photo taken after another recent Starlink launch. As you can see, as the sun is setting on the Atlantic in this photo here, this image taken from the perspective of the drone ship, I believe. And you've got one fairing that's already on the recovery vessel and another one being scooped up by the crane there. That one that's being hoisted in this image was completing its 13th flight. So, as with the boosters, so go the fairings. Reuse is part and parcel for SpaceX. Certainly something that they try to push as much as they possibly can. Obviously, as they study and learn about the potential of all of the fairing halves and the boosters and the flight profile that they will need for another mission. So yeah, they take a good hard look at all the hardware before it makes another flight. Now T minus 26 minutes and counting. point, we're just a little over 6 or so minutes away from the start of the big vent. You can see fueling is continuing along nicely as that frost line continues to move up the Falcon 9 rocket. At this point in the timeline, we're about 5 minutes into the point where helium loading has been moving into the pressure vessels on the first stage. Helium is used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. In about 20 or so seconds, that helium will be loaded onto the storage tanks on the second stage of the Falcon 9 rocket as well. Now T minus 23 minutes, 20 seconds and counting. As we're getting ready for the big vent and the start of LOX loading on the second stage of the Falcon 9 rocket, let's go ahead and take a quick peek into the future at the mission stats that will be on the books once this particular mission lifts off at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. This will be the 11th flight of this particular booster, tail number 1069. This will be the 274th Falcon 9 launch to date, the 80th Falcon 9 launch of 2023. This will be the 218th Falcon booster reflight, or the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This will be SpaceX's 84th orbital launch of 2023. It's 93rd in the last 365 days. It's a rolling number that we'd like to keep track of. This will be the 155th SpaceX orbital launch from Pad 40 and the 210th overall launch from this pad at the Cape and from the Sunshine State, although much more rainy recently. This will be the 64th launch from Cape Canaveral in 2023. That's counting missions both from NASA's Kennedy Space Center as well as Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Now T minus 21 minutes, 44 seconds and counting. We're just a little over a minute away from the start of the big vent. Fueling continues to move along well here. Taking a quick peek back at the live chat. I want to thank Gucci Pilot for another $5 super chat. Really appreciate the support. Says thanks for the Boca Chica update. How's the weather looking down in South Texas for tomorrow? Thanks. The weather this week, starting since we got here, so we drove from Florida long 20, gosh, probably 22 hours in total on the road, not counting stops. But the weather since we've arrived here in South Texas has been pretty pristine all week. Um, a couple of bit of light winds here and there, a little bit of fog in the evening, but overall it's been very, very pleasant. And we had a lot of folks since the launch at one point was going to be happening Friday morning, and then they had to fix some grid fin actuators overnight last night, which shifted the launch targeting to Saturday morning. Gave folks a nice Friday day to come out and see a fully stacked Starship rocket the day before it lifts off. So a lot of people taking advantage of the good weather to give it a fond farewell before liftoff tomorrow. At T minus 20 minutes, 2 seconds and counting, you see the start of the big vent here coming from the strong back. Another good visual indication that fueling is well underway on this mission. Set to lift off from Florida in less than 20 minutes. Also want to thank one of our regulars for joining us again, Callan526, joining with a $5 super chat. The thumbs up Fox or Corgi. Always appreciate that, Cal. Thanks for being with us tonight. And thanks to the more than 5,000 of you who are watching live. Really appreciate you being with us on a Friday night and start to a very busy weekend for both us and SpaceX, covering it all. If you haven't already, a quick way and a great way to support us is just by hitting the like button. Allows the YouTube algorithm to do its thing and allow more folks to find our coverage this evening. We're going to be very busy, even when this live stream ends, getting ready for a very robust live stream starting again at 5 o'clock Central Time, 6 o'clock Eastern, for the start of our Starship coverage. Again, Starship set to launch, targeting the opening of a 20-minute launch window that opens up at 7 o'clock Central Time, 1300 UTC. Our live coverage will start at 1100 UTC, 2 hours ahead of time. T minus 15 minutes and counting. Before the Starlink 6-28 mission goes up, just want to give you a brief overview of where things stand in the overall landscape of SpaceX launches to date. These are for all of their orbital flights. Missions between the Falcon 9 and the Falcon Heavy, obviously quite a bit of a ramp up over the years. Most notable leaps in 2022 and 2023. And we are still very much in the midst of November with the 84th launch on tap tonight. See there live on the right-hand side of your screen. SpaceX looking to send up another Falcon 9 rocket with another 23 Starlink satellites, adding to an ever-growing total. Tonight's launch will be the 34th launch of Starlink V2 mini satellites. It will also be the 54th Starlink launch for SpaceX in 2023. Now T minus 12 minutes, 58 seconds and counting. In the heart of your screen, you're taking a look at a stack of Starlink satellites in their flight configuration before the launch of another Starlink mission. Each of these Starlink V2 minis weighs about 1,760 pounds or 800 kilograms. After the solar panels unfurl, they have a wingspan of 100 feet or 30 meters. They use argon hull thrusters for in-orbit maneuvering, and they were built in Redmond, Washington, near Seattle. SpaceX has not published a good on-orbit photo or a rendering of what the Starlink V2 minis look like when they are deployed, but this is a photo taken earlier this year from Australian company HEO Robotics from one of its satellites. You can see the two solar panels extending from the main body of the satellite in this image from them. Now T minus 11 minutes, 57 seconds and counting until liftoff of this particular flight. Taking a quick look at the live chat, do need to pause and say big thank you to a few folks for some very generous super chat donations. Artemis, one of our channel members, with a very declarative "I'm back," with a incredibly generous $200 super chat saying, "Glad to support you guys. Keep it going." And my goodness, Artemis, we really appreciate that support. But then he puts another 200 in there saying, "Screw it, let's up the ante. Come on, people." Really appreciate the generosity, Artemis. Thank you so much for supporting us on that very generous level. A little gobsmacked. Thank you for that. Coy Little, one of our newest channel members, joining at the pad leader level. Thank you so much, Coy, for joining us. Coy, like our other members, is able to see 4K live streams of our missions from the Cape, as well as having access to our member-only videos and discounts at our online shop, shop.spaceflightnow.com. Now T minus 10 minutes, 20 seconds and counting. We're just a little over 3 minutes away from the start of the engine chill sequence. It's when a small amount of liquid oxygen is flowed through the Merlin engine turbo pumps to cool them ahead of engine start. Making sure I'm not missing folks in the live chat here. I want to thank Charles Boyer for a $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Charles. Appreciate you being with us this evening. Says, best of luck tomorrow to all you folks in Texas from those of us in Cape Canaveral. Thank you so much, Charles. It has certainly been uh, a really impressive sight to see the operation here at Starbase firsthand. This is my first trip down. Adam Bernstein's been down a number of times, so it's been good to be with him, have him sort of show me the ropes from a boots on the ground perspective. We hope you enjoy our coverage tomorrow morning. We are partnering up with the great folks at Lab Padre to bring you very robust coverage and a lot of different angles on this launch. Uh, Adam's up on South Padre Island with his camera view. We'll have Chuck Briggs with us down here as well. So we've got quite a team that's going to be making this Starship coverage happen tomorrow. So really appreciate all the support from everyone here in helping to make that happen. Now T minus 8 minutes, 33 seconds and counting. Also want to thank Roleary7 for also a very, very generous $50 super chat. Thank you so much, Roleary. No comment, but really appreciate the support on our coverage and helping us out with what has been a long but very rewarding road trip down here. So thank you so much for that. Also want to thank Victorious for also a very generous $20 super chat. Thank you so much, Victorious, and thanks for being with us this evening. William Rayner with a $5 super chat. Thank you so much, William. Really appreciate the support. Greg Williams joining us with a channel membership at the mission specialist level. Thank you, Greg. Also puts in a $5 super chat, says, go SpaceX, go Starship, go spaceflight now. Go Lab Padre, and hello, Nerdleverse. Thanks for the support, Greg. And lastly, for now, to Aldrich Upchurch for joining us at the pad leader level. Really appreciate the support, Aldrich. Happy to have you aboard. Now T minus 7 minutes, 15 seconds and counting. Getting very close to the start of liftoff, or the start of this mission. Starlink 6-28. The engine shell down sequence that I mentioned is getting underway right about now. Now T minus 6 minutes, 4 seconds and counting. I want to thank Nelson Reyes, one of our regulars, for joining us again with a $10 super chat. Thank you so much, Nelson, and says, thanks again for great coverage. Really appreciate that, and always enjoy being on the streams with all of you. And to the nearly 10,000 we've got watching live, welcome aboard. Glad you could be with us on a Friday night. If you haven't already, you can also help support our coverage just by hitting the like button. Allows the YouTube algorithm to do its thing, allow more folks to find this live coverage in the final 5.5 minutes before liftoff. And with the last few minutes we have, let's talk a little bit about the pedigree of this particular first stage booster that's flying for its 11th flight on this particular mission. As you mentioned, this is booster tail number 1069. It made its first flight on a trip supporting a mission to the International Space Station. This was CRS-24, launching back on December 21st, 2021, sending cargo and science up to the ISS. That was followed on August 28th, 2022, with the launch of this booster's first Starlink mission. That was Starlink 4-23. The third launch was on October 15th, 2022, when it launched the Hotbird 13F satellite. And that was a Eutelsat satellite, would go on along with another Eutelsat satellite. They replaced Hotbirds 8, 9, and 10 at the company's 13-degree east position. The fourth launch came on December 8th, 2022.
Strong back retract has started.
And we're getting mission audio now from SpaceX, hearing that the strong back retract now underway. The clamp arms will be opening up underneath the payload fairings as the transporter erector is going to be tilting back about 1.5 degrees over the course of the next 30 seconds or so. The next launch of this booster was its fourth flight on December 8th, 2022. That was for the 15th launch of OneWeb satellites. Those were built by a neighbor of SpaceX down the road there on the Space Coast over at Airbus OneWeb satellites over on Merritt Island. Launch number 5 came on February 2nd, 2023 for the Starlink 5-3 mission. It was followed up by a launch for Luxembourg-based company SES. The SES 18 and 19 satellites launched on March 17th. And moving right along, launches 7 through 10 were all Starlink missions. Those were 5-6 on May 4th, 5-12 on June 23rd, Starlink 6-9 on August 11th, and Starlink 6-19 on September 30th. Which, of course, brings us to tonight's mission, the 11th flight of this booster. Prepares to lift off in 3 minutes.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
T-minus 2 minutes, 23 seconds and counting. Less than a minute now, we'll hear the call out that LOX loading is complete after the second stage liquid oxygen tank is full. We approach the last 2 minutes. Want to thank a few more super chats that came in. Artemis with another $10 super chat. Thank you so much, Artemis. Says, if you guys donate $25 more by launch to hit 100, I'll match it. Boom.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
And you hear the call out for LOX loading complete on the second stage. The Falcon 9 is now fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. And as you see there, the venting at the launch pad as SpaceX purges the strong back propellant lines, getting ready to launch in just about 1.5 minutes. I want to thank Coy Little for a $5 super chat. Says you can also watch it in person. Always great to see a launch with your own eyes.
Ground gas closeouts.
Now just over a minute to liftoff. T-minus 1 minute, 10 seconds and counting. And we've got a few more super chats that have come in, and I promise I will come back and give you your kudos. Really appreciate the support, but want to keep our focus now in the last minute on liftoff here. So we're now T-minus 50 seconds.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
You hear that call out? The onboard computers have control of the countdown. You hear the go for launch momentarily.
SpaceX launch director, go for launch.
And you hear the call out, go for launch. Now T-minus 30 seconds and counting. SpaceX in a good position to send up its first of potentially 3 launches this weekend. Got the big one coming up tomorrow morning. That being Starship second integrated test flight. But first, Falcon 9 in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. And liftoff. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on the Starlink 6-28 mission. With a very low cloud shelf, the Falcon 9 is up and away very quickly, obscured by some low-hanging clouds and some fog that's been kicking around the Space Coast for quite some time. So we're going to flip over to the onboard views here from SpaceX. Now 30 seconds into flight. T plus 40 seconds. Starting to hear the roar of those 9 Merlin engines coming in really clearly from our microphones at the press site. Now 50 seconds into flight. Merlin engines should be throttling down as the vehicle approaches max Q.
Telemetry nominal.
Also want to note briefly that our count up clock, a little bit off from SpaceX's. Ours is in real time. The SpaceX feed is on a slight delay. That's the reason you see the discrepancy there. That call up, the Falcon 9 supersonic, it is now traveling faster than the speed of sound. Now T plus 1 minute, 24 seconds as the vehicle passes through max Q on the SpaceX feed. In real time, there's less than a minute left in the burn on the first stage. Merlin engines producing 1.7 million pounds of thrust.
Impact chill has started.
Falcon 9 approaching about 3,000 kilometers per hour. That MVAC chill down call is underway on the second stage to thermally condition that single Merlin vacuum engine for ignition. Normally we'd be bringing you our own tracker views, but with the thick clouds tonight, it's making tracking from the ground level pretty darn tricky. So that's the only reason why we're not showing you some ground views. It's because, as you saw with liftoff, it was pretty quickly obscured by those clouds. Approaching main engine cutoff and stage separation.
Stage separation.
And there you see the first stage falling away, the Merlin vacuum engine igniting. It'll be followed up by payload fairing separation momentarily. Now T plus 3 minutes to flight in real time. Coming up on that 3-minute mark on the SpaceX feed as you see the hypersonic grid fins extending from the first stage as Booster 1069 is preparing to make its way back down to the drone ship. Just read the instructions. Stationed now and waiting in the Atlantic Ocean.
Fairing separation.
And see the payload fairings now falling away. The 23 Starlink satellites now exposed to the vacuum of space for the first time. About 3.5 minutes into flight. The next big milestone coming up this evening will be first stage entry burn. That burn will start at T plus 6 minutes, 10 seconds. Right now, as we're seeing those views from the SpaceX feed, the time you want to pay attention to see that event happening.
Both stages are following nominal trajectories.
Is the number at the bottom of your screen. Our count up clock on the top right-hand corner, that is real time in the mission profile. Now T plus 4 minutes, 20 seconds and counting. T plus 4 minutes, 33 seconds in real time. 4:24 on the SpaceX feed. If you weren't with us before, I just want to show you that photo again of what the fairing recovery looks like. They come down under parachutes and then they're scooped up from the ocean by one of the recovery vessels. SpaceX has a pair of these named after former NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley, named Bob and Doug, respectively. This was a photo taken as the very nice sunset there, as one of the fairing halves, the one we believe that's being scooped up out of the water actively in this photo, was flying for its 13th mission. T plus 5 minutes, 22 seconds in real time, 5:12 in the SpaceX feed. Less than a minute away from the start of the entry burn. That burn will last 23 seconds. I'll be setting up the booster for the landing burn to begin at T plus 8 minutes and 4 seconds. That burn
Both stages
will
continue to follow nominal trajectories.
23 seconds as it heads down to the drone ship that's ready and waiting for it. Now T plus 6 minutes, 8 seconds in real time. Less than 10 seconds away from the start of the first stage entry burn.
Stage 1, FTS has safed.
Stage 1, entry burn, startup.
There you see that entry burn beginning, that call out that the FTS is saved. That is the flight termination system, the detonation device in the event that SpaceX had a off-nominal event in which it needed to detonate the rocket.
Stage
That is what
2, FTS has safed.
the FTS
Stage 1,
is.
entry burn, shutdown.
There you see the end of the entry burn as the Merlin vacuum engine continues its burn. Now coming up on 7 minutes into flight real time, about 10 seconds behind on the SpaceX feed. Coming up the next mission milestone at T plus 8 minutes, 4 seconds is when the landing burn will begin, setting up the booster to have a controlled descent down towards the drone ship, waiting for it in the Atlantic Ocean. Just read the instructions. SpaceX, of course, has 3 drone ships currently. Imagine as they continue to ramp up their launch cadence, we may see another drone ship enter into the picture at some point in the coming years. But for now, they do have 2 on the East Coast, shortfall of gravitas, and just read the instructions. And over on the East
Stage
Coast
1,
is,
transonic.
Of Course I Still Love You. That call, that booster's transonic, is meaning that it's traveling below the speed of sound. Now coming up on 8 minutes into flight, real time. T plus 7 minutes, 50 seconds and counting on the SpaceX feed.
Stage 2 terminal guidance.
Entry burn should be beginning.
Stage 1, landing burn.
Here's to see the start of the landing burn. Excuse me. Views from the drone ship should be coming up. There we go on the right-hand side of your screen.
Stage 1, landing leg, deploy.
And as those landing legs deployed and the booster came down, it looked like it was
Stage 1, landing confirmed.
blasting off a good bit of water that was coating the drone ship there. As mentioned, it's been quite sloppy out in the Gulf of Mexico as well as the Atlantic. We're approaching Seco. Second stage engine cutoff. There you see. At this point, the Falcon 9's upper stage will enter into a coast phase until T plus 54 minutes, 9 seconds, when that Merlin vacuum engine will reignite. And things are getting quite sloppy on the ground here on the Space Coast, where we could once see the rocket. Now we only see lights. We don't even see the launch tower out there with the new crew access arm. That's how much the rain is starting to fall and the fog roll in. So fortunately, we were able to see as much as we were when this rocket lifted off. Now much more obscured at this point. And we've got the first one in the books, ladies and gentlemen. The first of potentially 3 launches from 3 different states for SpaceX all across the country. Want to take a peek now at the next star of the show coming up. This is a live view of the fully integrated Starship rocket. A little bit dark here in this perspective, mostly because that, unfortunately, that you got that light at the bottom corner of the screen, but you see the flashing lights of the support tower there. And just to the left, Ship 25 up top, Booster 9 down below, which stacked and then unstacked and then restacked. It's been quite busy out here as SpaceX has been preparing for its second integrated flight tests coming up again tomorrow morning at, they're targeting the start of their 20-minute launch window, which opens at 7 a.m. Central Time, 1300 UTC. Our live coverage will begin at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning Central Time. So be sure to get a little bit of shut-eye and join us back for that. But before we go from here tonight, I do want to thank a few more folks who were very generous in their support of our coverage this evening. See Travis Friesen with a $10 super chat. Thank you so much, Travis. Asks, when is the Artemis 2 launch? I would like to be there in person. Well, right now, NASA is targeting launch of its SLS rocket with the Orion spacecraft and the 4 astronauts on board at the end of 2024. November is, generally speaking, when they are looking to launch that mission from Launch Complex 39B at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. For some of the big milestones beyond stacking the rocket that we are looking forward to, they are also making some upgrades to the launch infrastructure there at 39B, including adding an emergency egress system so that as the astronauts are getting on board the Orion spacecraft, if for some reason during that ingress period or leading up to it, if there's some sort of emergency on the mobile launcher or with any part of the vehicle, they have the means to quickly get away from the rocket and use basically a sophisticated zipline system, get in some big baskets, which are being manufactured on the Space Coast, and they'll ride those down to safety. That work is still very much in work. The core stage for the Artemis 2 Space Launch System rocket is still at Michoud Assembly Facility down in Louisiana, close by to Stennis Space Center, where they just conducted I believe their second RS-25 engine in a multi-hot fire test campaign that they're undertaking at Stennis, preparing the next generation of RS-25 engines for their future flights supporting other Artemis missions. But thanks so much, Travis, for the question. Little vague on exactly the when, because there is sort of a general target for that mission, but they are still working through a number of key items, including continue to study the heat shield that was on the Orion spacecraft from the Artemis 1 mission. I want to thank Trish MC for a very generous $50 super chat. Really appreciate that so much, Trish. Thank you for supporting us at that level. Also, same to Josh King, one of our channel members, for also with a $50 super chat. Thank you so much, Josh, for supporting us at that level. And says, go Falcon 9, go Starship. Yes, well, you can add a ×2 to that go Falcon 9, since after all is said and done with Starship tomorrow morning, SpaceX is targeting a launch of another Falcon 9 rocket, this one looking to go up from the West Coast, Vandenberg Space Force Base. That mission targeting liftoff at 10:55 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That launch window lasts until, they have backup opportunities that last until 2:52 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on Sunday, November 19th. So a very busy continuing of the weekend. Artemis coming back with another really generous super chat, $90. Thank you so much, Artemis, one of our channel members as well. Man of your word. Definitely see it, definitely believe it. Thank you so much. Calicia Lee, another one of our channel members with a $20 super chat. Thank you so much, Calicia. Really appreciate that. Very generous of you. This checking in from Port St. Lucie, Florida. Excellent. Thanks for the awesome coverage and information. We are happy to bring it to you. We're about 50 or so minutes until the Starlink satellite deployment happens. We're T plus 15 minutes, 44 seconds into flight right now. And Calicia followed up with a $5 super chat saying, great view from Port St. Lucie. So maybe a little bit further away was better views of the launch than right up on it there at the press site. Billy Allen with a $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Billy. Really appreciate your support. And it looks like lastly for this evening, but certainly not least, Dan Plays Games with a £2 super chat saying watching from Starlink Internet in the UK. So Starlink supporting a Starlink launch. It is, I guess, 5:20 a.m. in the UK. So either thank you for staying up late or getting up extremely early, Dan. Thank you so much. And to Izzy Bluffin with a $1 super chat. Thank you, Izzy. And before we go, just want to go through the mission stats as they currently stand now that we had a successful launch. It looks like the weather's clearing up just a little bit, starting to see the launch tower there at pad 40 start to come back into view. So the weather modestly improving. I'll give it that, although it still looks pretty crummy out there. Regardless, those mission stats as they currently stand. This was the 11th flight of Falcon 9 booster 1069, the 274th Falcon 9 launch to date. This is the 80th Falcon 9 launch of 2023, the 218th Falcon booster reflight, the 84th SpaceX orbital launch of 2023. This was SpaceX's 93rd orbital launch in the last 365 days, the 115th orbital launch from pad 40. This was the 210th overall launch from this particular pad. And this was the 64th orbital launch from Cape Canaveral in 2023. So launches between both KSC and the Cape itself. And that's going to go ahead and do it for us for, again, round one of a busy 3-round weekend. I want to thank all of you who have joined us tonight, all of our new channel members, and those of you with some exceedingly generous super chats tonight. Really appreciate you being a part of the conversation and helping support us do some of this special on-scene launch coverage, as we always bring you the launches from the Cape and from Vandenberg, but it's always great to be where the action is. And so we are certainly enjoying being here on the ground at Starbase in South Texas, and very much looking forward to our live launch coverage in partnership with Lab Padre starting tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock Central Time. Really want to thank our wonderful moderators who are always working hard, keeping things kosher in the chat. Stephanie B, Astro Joe, and Dremwolf. You guys are always working hard, doing some great work out there. So thank you as always to the three of you for being with us and supporting us for these live launch coverages. want to thank, of course, Stephen Young, who's holding down the fort there in not so sunshiny state of Florida, braving the rain and the bugs to make sure everything was set up for tonight's mission as Adam and I work towards our coverage here on the ground here in Starbase in South Texas. And thanks to all of you who have been with us throughout the duration of this evening. We're going to go ahead and power down for a little bit, get our ducks in a row, and prepare for what will hopefully be a very robust and exciting launch, testing out a lot of new technologies for Starship tomorrow. We're going to see the launch debut of the water deluge system, as well as, if SpaceX is able to make it to stage separation with Starship, the hot staging event, which they've been doing a lot of work towards on that, adding in the hot staging ring and the supporting plate that protects the super heavy booster from the engine impact from ship 25 up top as staging commences. So, going to be a very exciting time. I'm going to go ahead and pause for now as I feel my voice starting to give out a little bit, and we've got lots of talking to do in the next few hours. Lastly, want to thank Gregory Moore for joining us at the live chat just moved, the pad leader level. Thank you so much, Gregory, who now has access to those 4K live stream views, member only videos, and discounts at the online shop.spaceflightnow.com. Got some great coverage for you in the morning. Really excited to bring that to you in partnership with Lab Padres. So hope you're able to join us for that tomorrow. Really excited to get this kicked off. And with that, go ahead and wrap up the Starlink 6-28 mission coverage for tonight. Hope you all have a wonderful end to your Friday evening, or for those on the East Coast or beyond, a good start to your Saturday morning. I'm Will Robinson Smith. Be good to yourself, be good to others. And I'll say we'll see you next time. The next time coming up real soon. Have a good night.